What is up, fellas? We are back for another UFC predictions video, this time for UFC 310, Pantoja versus Asakura. Guys, big pay-per-view this weekend. A lot of sick fights. This is a really good card. This card I've been looking forward to for quite some time. I was way more excited for this card than like UFC 309. We got a lot of great matchups on this card. Not one women's MMA fight. Rejoice. They're really they're really treating us well after this bye week. But yeah, let's jump right into it, fellas. Kicking us off at heavyweight, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Lucas Brzeski. Kennedy Nzechukwu made his heavyweight debut not that long ago against Chris Barnett. Looked pretty good there, but it's Chris Barnett. Also, Barnett got hurt, so you can't really read into that so much. And I think Lucas Brzeski is a harder test than a Chris Barnett. Just because he's similarly framed, he's a real heavyweight. You know, he's 6'4", almost to 80-inch reach. And Kennedy Nzechukwu was actually lined about the same as he was against Chris Barnett, which I think is interesting. I don't think Kennedy is a minus 650 here. I am going to pick him to win, though, just because I think there is a stark athleticism difference between these two guys. Also, Kennedy does have the reach. He is going to be a bit bigger. He did look a bit better at heavyweight as well. I don't think Lucas Brzeski's a complete zero, can nothing, but I don't think he's that good. My only concern for Kennedy in this matchup would be his chin. His durability is suspect. I don't trust it at all. Like, this guy, like losing to Daun Jung by KO instantly is not a great look. And also recently he lost to OSP, which I don't fucking love at all. But I think moving up to heavyweight's probably the right thing for him. And I think guys who were 205ers just are a little bit more athletic and technical than your average unranked heavyweight. So I'm going to go with Kennedy in this matchup. I think he's going to be the better striker. I think he's going to impose his will more just because he's a bigger guy. I think he does have a bit more power than a Lucas Brzeski as well. Yeah, the only thing that's suspect really is his chin. So he's liable to get cracked. It can happen. And he does kind of wilt under pressure, but I think Kennedy in this matchup will be the guy pressuring, or he should be if he wants to win. And Lucas Brzeski, he's been knocked out a couple times in his career. Got knocked out by Waldo Cortez Acosta, which isn't the greatest look in the world. Then he got knocked out by Mick Parkin. I think he's Mick Parkin's only knockout win in the UFC. So not the two best knockout losses to have, to be honest. But sometimes he's shown like a decent skill set, but I don't know. I just can't really get behind him here, even at this giant underdog price. I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu here. I think he could get a TKO here or a decision. I think he can melt Lucas Brzeski up against the cage, start working his knees. He's got really nice knees in the clinch, and maybe get himself a TKO in like rounds 2 or 3, I think. I think round 1 will be kind of a feeling out process. Just because this is an actual heavyweight framed guy, not a short, fat guy you can just kind of bully around the cage. Moving up to lightweight, Clay Guida is taking on Chase Hooper. Clay Guida's 42, guys. I'm going with Chase Hooper. This is a no-brainer for me. Love Clay Guida, OG of the sport, legend, but he's 42. He's going to be out-framed badly. I don't think he's going to be able to get anything done on the feet against Chase Hooper because Chase Hooper is so much larger. In the grappling, although Clay Guida is a good wrestler, he has infinite cardio and can work a really good pace. The one thing that Chase Hooper has that separates himself as a grappler is his submission threat. Not only can Chase Hooper wrestle quite well, but he's very dangerous with his submissions. And he's actually already submitted Clay Guida in a grappling match. And I think largely that's what's going to happen again. I could see Clay Guida maybe getting stunned in the feet or something, or maybe shooting a bad takedown. And I can see Chase Hooper being able to latch up a submission on the 42-year-old Clay Guida. Also, Chase Hooper, man, I got to give credit where credit's due. He's looked really good at lightweight, like a lot better. Like some of his recent wins I haven't gone too crazy for, but his performance against Borishev really, really, really impressed me. That was like, because this isn't an easy guy to beat the shit out of like Chase Hooper did. I mean, Chase Hooper really did beat the shit out of Vyacheslav Borishev, and that's really hard to do, generally speaking, because he's a real technical striker, and he's a real tough guy. Like Jordan Levitt, I didn't really care that he beat, and Nick Fiore, nobody really cares. But the Borishev performance let me know, okay, this young man's making some actual improvements to his game. Um, and he's only 25, man. He's gonna look even better this fight, and he should be able to get a submission over the OG Clay Guida, I think, in like round 1 or 2, I would say. Moving up to welterweight, Michael Chiesa taking on Max Griffin. This is a tricky fight. There's a lot of good underdogs that I like on this card here. Um, Man, this is a tricky fight because they're both old. The way I see this fight is Max Griffin is much better on the feet than a Michael Chiesa, but Michael Chiesa most certainly has a grappling upside against Max Griffin. Not that Max Griffin's a bad grappler, he has pretty solid takedown defense, and he has a takedown of his own. It's just, if you put a gun to my head, who's going to get a takedown and control a guy for 3 minutes of a round? It's going to be Michael Chiesa, but Michael Chiesa really shies away from taking damage. He does not like taking shots, at least recently. He's been able to get submitted very easily in his last few fights. His only win recently is coming off of the 40-year-old Tony Ferguson, who, I hate to say it, is beyond done, is a ghost of himself. So I don't rate that win at all. Max Griffin, on the other hand, coming off of a win, a split decision, I believe, over Jeremiah Wells, which I think is a light years more competition than a welterweight 40-year-old Tony Ferguson right now. You know, took Michael Morales to a UD, got a round off of him though. Split decision win over Tim Means, not the greatest. Split decision loss to Neil Magny, I don't love, but he did drop Magny in that fight and outstrike him. It's like, do I favor the grappling upside or the striking upside against for these two old men? How long ago was this fight? February. So it's been almost a year since Max Griffin has fought, and he's 39. Mm. This is tricky business because when we look at Michael Chiesa's recent losses, these are two decent fighters. Like Luque, this was before Luque got a fucking brain bleed. This was actual Vicente Luque. So that loss I understand. Sean Brady UD. Sean Brady looked good in this fight until that last round. You know, Michael Chiesa started to kind of gain some momentum against Sean Brady in that last round. Then he got subbed up by Kevin Holland, which I don't love because I think Kevin Holland's kind of bad. And he beats Tony. But he does have a 5-round UD win over Neil Magny, which I think is good. Beat RDA. But this is in 2020, man. This is a really, really hard fight to pick. For me. I think I'm going to go with Michael Chiesa. Am I picking Michael Chiesa to win a UFC fight that's not against Old Man Tony? It's just Max Griffin's 40, dude, and he hasn't fought in a year. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Michael Chiesa. I just think he has the grappling upside. I think he has a submission grappling upside. And I think he can win minutes in this fight. I think he can frame bully a Max Griffin. I think he can push him up against the cage, work some trips, kind of just toss him around in the cage, get himself some control time, and bank minutes in this fight. I think he can positionally grapple better than Max Griffin. I think he could find a sub if it presents itself. He's pretty good at that. A Max Griffin obviously can hurt Chiesa with a big shot. He's got good power. Fuck, dude, this is such a tricky one. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the underdog. I think this line is gonna get even closer as we get closer to fight night. So I'm gonna go with the dog, Michael Chiesa. I don't know though. This is an ugly fight. This is a tricky one for me. It's hard to get a read on this one because both these guys are kind of on the downswing of their career, and they both kind of have opposite fight styles. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. But I'm gonna go with Chiesa. I think I'm gonna go with the Chiesa decision over Max Griffin. Moving up to flyweight, Cody Durden versus Joshua Van. Speaking of fights that I'm a little bit torn on, um, this is another tricky one for me, guys. A lot of people are on the Joshua Van hype train, which I understand. He is quite good, really good boxing, decent grappling defense. This is an interesting matchup for the fact that once again these guys have very kind of differing approaches to fights. Joshua Van, a guy who normally builds into fights, he normally ramps up his volume and his output as the fight goes on. And Cody Durden is almost the opposite. Cody Durden gasses a little bit as the fight goes on. So, if you want to say, oh, I'm going to pick Joshua Van because, Cody's going to slow down and Joshua Van's going to ramp up. I understand it. But you can also say, I'm going to pick Cody Durden because Joshua Van starts out really slow and Cody Durden starts out really fucking hot. It's a tricky one. But I'm almost tempted to pick Cody Durden as an underdog because a lot of gripes that people have about Cody Durden as far as like durability, I think Joshua Van really does lack in the durability department. Let me explain. So, UFC debut fought Zalga Zumagulov, really good flyweight, great win. Then he fights Kevin Borjas, and although he beat Borjas, he did get hurt pretty bad, if I remember correctly, from Borjas, got hit by a big shot, and I was like, ooh, that's not the best look in the world. Beat Boons, then fought Charles Johnson, got brutally KO'd, he got beat up in that fight. And then I said when he was fighting Edgar Chairez on short notice, when I was breaking down that fight, I said he'd probably win because I think he's the better fighter. But it would not surprise me at all if this kid's chin gets cracked again because he took the fight way too soon after getting flatlined by Charles Johnson. And I was right. He did win the fight by decision, but it did not come easy. And he got rocked very badly by Edgar Chairez on a couple of occasions. And I don't love that, man. I think Cody Durden is a substantial level above an Edgar Chairez. I don't love getting wobbled all over the place by this guy. Like, he's got 4 TKOs and we're shitting our pants when we get hit by this guy. Granted, like I said, he took it on very short notice right after getting knocked out. But I don't love it, dude. And when we look at Cody Durden, he's only been KO'd once. He's got a lot of finishes. He's a real finisher. 12 wins out of his 17 are finishes. And this guy's a really fast starter. All right? Against a pretty slow starter in Joshua Van. And when we look at his losses, Tagir Ulanbekov is really good. Bruno Silva, I picked Bruno Silva to beat Cody Durden by TKO. But what I will say is I was shitting my pants watching this fight because Cody Durden literally looked like the greatest flyweight of all time in this matchup. He was beating the piss out of Bruno Silva everywhere this fight went. Bruno Silva looked like a lost dog in this matchup up until he just caught him with a big shot. And Bruno Silva, he hits harder than a fucking Joshua Van, I think. He's very explosive. So I just, and then Matt Schnell, he got scrappy with Matt Schnell, right? And you're like, oh, he got scrappy with Matt Schnell. They were going to war. My thing is, Matt Schnell was never let down by his lack of technical ability, really. He was just dumb and he has no chin. But on the feet, he actually does have really technical and good striking. It's just he lets himself down with his durability and his decision to shoot a takedown on Cody Durden in what was a competitive stand-up fight. Got him subbed up really quickly. But I think that's another thing with Cody Durden is Cody Durden has nice submissions. He's got good wrestling. He's going to be the bigger guy. I remember when Josh Van fought Charles Johnson, he looked like a child next to this guy, Charles Johnson. And it's just I don't know. And the thing is, Durden has a win over Charles Johnson. He has a win over Jake Hadley. These are decent wins at flyweight. You know what I mean? A draw with Gutierrez. You know what I mean? It's hard. I like Josh Van, and I see the argument for people he's gonna put on a volume striking clinic in rounds 2 and 3. I totally get it, and it's a very viable pick, and I think it can happen. But I think this is a pretty stiff test, honestly. Cody Durden's well-rounded. And also, another thing that pissed me off in the Josh Van fight against Edgar Chairez, why are we rolling for leg locks, dude? Holy shit, I almost had a stroke when he rolled for a leg lock against Chairez. Because when you roll for a leg lock and you're not a submission guy, because Joshua Van's not. He's not like a elite jiu-jitsu black belt. When you roll for a leg, you're basically saying, hey, please punch me in the face as hard as you can and knock me out. That's basically what you're saying. Now, I could talk about this fight for like 30 minutes. Cody Durden does have a weakness on the feet to hooks, and Joshua Van has really nice hooks. He also, I think, is a little bit soft bodied, so I think Van's body shots could hurt him pretty good and take a little bit of his gas tank away. Oh, man. This is a tricky one, fellas. I think I'm going to very slightly lean. Oh, man. I think I'm going to go with. Do I go with the underdog? I am. I'm going to go with Cody Durden. Uh, I think he's got wrestling upside. He's got decent power. He's got submission threat. He's very dangerous early, where Van kind of lets off a little bit early. Van, I don't trust his durability just as much as I don't really trust Durden's a ton. Um, he's going to be the bigger guy. He's going to be the worst striker technically. Yeah, I'm going to go with Cody Durden. I think this is going to be a really competitive fight, but I think Cody Durden has enough cardio to win the first 2 rounds. But we'll see. This is going to be a super sick fight, really competitive fight. Um, Very 50-50. And if in 50-50 fights, or as I see them 50-50 fights, I like to go with the underdog just because I think that's value, you know? So, fuck it. I'm going to go with Cody Durden. That's it. Okay, so this is a catchweight apparently. Moving up to a catchweight between Chris Weidman and Eric Anders. I broke down this fight like 3 weeks ago for UFC 309. I picked Chris Weidman as the underdog. He's now a slight favorite against Eric Anders. I'm going to pick him again. I just don't think Eric Anders is that good. Both of these guys are quite old. Um, Both of these guys are pretty well rounded. But I don't think Eric Anders does anything better than Chris Weidman in mixed martial arts. Literally nothing. I don't think he's a better boxer. I don't think he's a better grappler. I don't think he has better submissions. I know Chris Weidman's old and over the hill. So is Eric Anders. And in their last performance, I liked the way, despite eye poking Bruno Silva, he looked really good against Bruno Silva on the feet, outboxing him with ease, who's a very dangerous guy with a lot of power. When he decides to throw, Eric Anders in his last performance, Jamie Pickett. We're taking Jamie Pickett 3 rounds. You know what I mean? Actually, I want to check the stats on the Jamie Pickett fight. I just want to see if this was Jamie Pickett gets a knockdown on you. Yeah, I don't love that. I really don't love that. I'm gonna go with Chris Weidman. I don't think either guy's particularly durable. I don't think either guy's particularly powerful. I think Weidman has the sharper boxing. I think he's a better grappler. I think he's more alive to get a submission. So I'm gonna go with Chris Weidman as the slight favorite. I think he'll win a decision over Eric Anders. Honestly, I could see him popping him with a shot on the feet too, if I'm being real. Moving up to welterweight, here's a sick matchup, guys. Randy Brown taking on Bryan Battle. I love this fight, guys. I have been a Bryan Battle enjoyer for quite some time, and it's good to see him getting bigger fights now, honestly. Um, I don't know if I like him being lined as a minus almost like 250 over Randy Brown, because I think this is a tricky fight for Bryan Battle. And once again, this is another fight where the styles kind of clash. Randy Brown's very elusive, long range kickboxing style, and Bryan Battle's a much more of a pressure fighter, smothering you with just insane volume and walking you down the whole fight. I think this will make for a really interesting fight. I'm going to go with Bryan Battle here in this matchup, although I do think Randy Brown is a very, very dangerous customer, and he is really good at landing a nice counter shot. And Bryan Battle, although I think he is really good, he leaves his chin a little bit too high for me sometimes, and I don't think his chin is the most solid in the world. I think it could be cracked pretty good. And Randy Brown could do it, man. But I like the momentum that Bryan Battle has kind of found for himself lately. He's been looking really good against a decent level of opposition. So is Randy Brown, to be fair. Not the most elite opposition for Randy Brown recently. You know, Wellington Turman, very chinny. Not the greatest fighter in the world. Muslim Salikov, honestly a better aging win than I thought it would be. but still he's 40. And then Zaleski Dos Santos, I think is a good one, but we got really scrappy with Zaleski Dos Santos, which I don't particularly love. Brian Battle, on the other hand, knocked out Kevin Jousset, great win. He was beating the dog shit out of Angelusa. I'm counting that as a win, so good win. AJ Fletcher sub, a little bit sketchy at some points, but it's a good win, decent win. Gabe Green, 14-second knockout, great win. Then he lost to Renat Fikretnov, which honestly is a loss I don't love that much, but that was, almost 3 years ago now. See, my thing is, I think both of these guys' styles can play into beating one another. I can see Brian Battle getting in there a little too aggressive, chin too high. I can see Randy Brown just landing a nice straight counter punch and drop in battle. But I can also see, as time goes on, if Randy Brown doesn't find that counter shot particularly early, I can see Brian Battle really starting to fucking put a pace on him and start to land big shots on the feet as Randy Brown kind of slows down, as Brian Battle starts to track him and get a little bit more efficient at walking him down as the fight goes on. This is going to be a good fight. I'm going to go with Brian Battle, but I think this line's a little bit off. I think these guys should be a little bit closer to evens, in my opinion. But I think Brian Battle can get himself a TKO here because Randy Brown can melt the pressure. Jack Della Maddalena was able to do it very quickly. And I think Brian Battle can get himself a TKO in like rounds 2 or 3, kind of as the fight goes on. I think it'll be a little bit sketchy early. Maybe Randy Brown drops him, lands a big shot, stuns him early on. But if he doesn't get the finish, Brian Battle's going to keep coming for every single round. And Randy Brown, I think, might get a little discouraged if that pressure stays on him after Brian Battle takes his best shot, if what I'm saying makes sense to you guys. So I'm going to lean Brian Battle, kind of like late TKO. But it would not surprise me if Randy Brown catches him with a big shot. So I'm giving Randy Brown his due because I think he is dangerous. Oh, is that a number 1 contenders fight on my prelims? I think it is. Moving up to featherweight, the undefeated Movsar Evilov is taking on Aljamain Sterling. This is kind of a sick fight. I'm actually looking forward to this fight, guys. Interesting matchup here. I think I'm going to go with Movsar Evilov, guys. I know it's the boring pick, but he is the undefeated Russian guy. So, probably a safe bet. Minus 265 over Aljo, though, is a little bit disrespectful, in my opinion. Aljamain Sterling's coming off of a really good performance against Calvin Kattar. Looked really great there. Movsar Evilov's coming off of, I believe, the Arnold Allen fight, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, not the greatest fight either. Low-key, lost that fight by TKO. Those knees to the head were legal. But undefeated in the UFC. Some pretty good wins. Dan Ige, Diego Lopez, Arnold Allen. Those are 3 solid wins. Basically where I think this fight largely is going to take place. I don't think Aljamain Sterling's going to really be able to take down Movsar Evilov. Not very effectively, I don't think. I don't think Movsar Evilov's really going to shoot on Aljamain Sterling. I think he would be foolish to do that. I think largely this fight's going to take place on the feet. And where I don't think Movsar Evilov has the greatest stand-up, I think his boxing is just a little bit cleaner and more technical than an Aljamain Sterling. Just outright. Aljo is very tricky, comes from weird angles with his striking, throws a lot of kicks and things like that. But that does leave him open on occasion. And for a real guy, for a guy who keeps a nice tight guard and throws pretty clean punches, not with a lot of power, but keeps technically pretty clean. I kind of like Movsar in that. Also, Aljo's 35 now at a lighter weight class. I don't love that for him. I think Aljo has a submission upside for sure. I think he's way more lethal with the submissions. I just don't know if I can see him really getting in that good of a position against this guy, who's just a very big, jacked, physical guy for this division. Very strong. Like Diego Lopez had him in some very dangerous positions, and he was able to just power out of it. I think I'm going to go with Movsar Evilov here, guys, just being the better striker on the feet. Now, maybe as the fight goes on, Evilov does kind of tend to slow down a little bit, and Aljamain Sterling's a guy with a lot of 5-round experience. So I could see him maybe working into this fight as it kind of goes on, maybe getting some success on the feet, maybe getting Evilov into some more dangerous positions here. If this was a 5-rounder, honestly, I would pick Aljo outright, no questions asked. If this was like the main event of a fight night, hypothetically. but it's not. It's a 3-rounder, and I think in that, I think Evolov will be fresh enough to win the first 2 rounds, keeping defensively responsible on the feet, stuffing Aljamain's takedown attempts, and just landing better shots with his cleaner boxing, I think. So I'm going to go with Evolov probably by decision in this matchup. I believe we're opening up the main card. No, we're not. These are still prelims. Holy shit. This card is so good, dude. Moving up to welterweight, Vicente Luque is taking on Themba Gorimbo. Guys, I'm going with Themba Gorimbo. I hate to say it, but it's just Luque has not looked the same since the brain bleed. I'm just being honest. He hasn't looked the same since the brain bleed. And Themba Gorimbo, although he's put on some pretty snaky performances, he's got really good grappling. He's a big guy for the division. Got decent power on his hands. Got decent stand up. And he's riding a lot of momentum. Where Vicente Luque, not riding so much momentum, looked really, really bad against Joaquin Buckley. Really bad performance from him. Kind of looked like he quit. Kind of looked like he gave up in that fight. I hate to say it, which I don't love. Beat RDA in a 5-round decision coming off of that brain bleed, but he worked a lot of his grappling. But I don't think he's going to be able to find that much grappling success over Themba Gorimbo. Yeah, it's just a slight lean to Themba. He's just riding more momentum. I get it against a lower level of competition by far, but, you know, he's on a streak. He's feeling himself. And I think he's making improvements to his game. I'm just going to really slightly lean Themba Gorimbo. I think I'm going to go with Themba Gorimbo by decision. I don't really see him KOing Vicente Luque. I don't really see him submitting him either, but I can see him just being a big frame bully in the grappling and being able to control Luque up against the cage or maybe get a takedown or something. And Luque is a guy who is, one of these jiu-jitsu guys. Sometimes when you get him on his back and he kind of likes to play that guard game instead of just scrambling to get up, which I don't love, especially in a 3-rounder. So I'm just going to very slightly lean Themba Gorimbo. I think he's got himself a little bit of a grappling upside as far as wrestling goes. Submission upside, I'd honestly give to Luque. Luque's got a very nice Dars choke, but I don't think so, man. I would love to see a Luque win. It would make me so happy. Luque has been one of my favorite welterweights for a really long time, but I don't love the matchup right now, to be honest. Especially after what he showed against Buckley, I wasn't super happy with that look, especially going into a matchup against another guy who's riding a lot of momentum. Moving up to light heavyweight, Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. Guys, Dominic Reyes is almost minus 400. This is what a loss to Roman Dolidze will do to a guy. That's what a loss to Roman Dolidze will do to a guy right there. Make you plus 270 against Dominic Reyes. Guys, I'm going with Dominic Reyes. We're coming for that fucking belt, baby. Pereira, count your fucking days, buddy. Go with Dominic Reyes. Although his chin is dust. Anthony Smith, he lost to Roman Dolidze on short notice. Roman Dolidze sucks. And Dominic Reyes just knocked out Dustin Jacoby. Dustin Jacoby, I think, would beat the shit out of Anthony Smith. Dominic Reyes still has that power. I think he's better in the stand-up. And I don't think Anthony Smith, like Dominic Reyes, still wants to win. That's my thing. This is a guy who came out here in round 1 and got a win over a tough guy after this streak. This is a guy who still believes in himself. This is a guy who still wants to win. Outside of Vitor Pedrino stuffing his head into a guillotine, I mean, it's just this Dolidze performance, man. I cannot pick a guy who lost to Roman Dolidze going up a weight class on short notice, and the fight took place on the feet. I can't think you're beating Dominic Reyes. I just can't do it. I got to go with Dominic Reyes. I think he's going to get a TKO over Anthony Smith. I do think this line should be closer, though, because I don't trust Dominic Reyes' durability at minus 400. You got to be fucking me. You know what I mean? But he did just knock out a more dangerous guy. So But yeah, I'm going with Dominic Reyes. I think TKO. I think he's got more power than Anthony Smith. I think he wants to win more than Anthony Smith. He's younger than Anthony Smith. Um, we'll see though. Opening up the main card at featherweight, guys. Any ball knowers? Any ball knowers in chat? Anybody know ball here? If you were a fan of the sport, when you saw this matchup get tweeted out, if you weren't at least half chubbed, you're not a fan of the sport. This matchup is fucking sick. Nate the Train Landwehr taking on Doohoo Choi. This fight just screams fight of the night, right? Like nobody sees this fight and thinks this is not gonna get fight of the night. This fight on paper might be just sick as fuck. Because both of these guys go in there and they deliver. Both of these guys have been in some real fucking wars. Doohoo Choi especially, in his early UFC career. The fights he was getting into were just fucking insane. I mean, he has a Hall of Fame fight with Cub Swanson. Everybody knows this because of how insane that fight was. And Nate Landwehr has had some insanely fun fights as well, like against David Onama, lighting up the crowd, going all 3 rounds, just having a war. This fight, I'm really excited for this one. And the matchup is just really good too. It is a tricky one to pick as well, because Nate Landwehr, I think Nate Landwehr is the side. He's pretty well rounded. He's got decent grappling. He's got good kickboxing. He's got very good volume. He's got decent power, and he's got a great pace for 3 rounds. This guy can put on pressure like you would not believe. Doohoo Choi, on the other hand, a lot more cerebral with the way he strikes, picks his shots a little more. I'm not sure he's necessarily cleaner on the feet. I think he's defensively a little cleaner, or he's looked a little bit cleaner defensively lately. Nate Landwehr is a guy who kind of leaves his chin up a little bit. My only concern in this fight with picking Nate Landwehr is he is a guy who really needs to take a shot clean to kind of wake up, if that makes sense. Um, if you know ball, you understand what I'm saying. He needs to take a good shot to the chin and kind of get a little wobble in the knees for him to really activate, for him to really lock in. You know what I mean? You know, Emmers gave him a hard shot, woke him up, and then he fucking TKO'd Emmers. You know, Onama gave him a hard shot. He woke up and beat Onama. You know what I mean? He's one of these guys who needs to take one and he kind of works his way in. The problem is sometimes he will take one and not work his way back into the fight. Sometimes the first thing that hits him clean sleeps him. And Doohoo Choi has the ability to put your fucking lights out. I am highlighting the 12 KOs out of his 15 wins. This kid has power. I say kid, he's 33 now. Now, when we look at his career, I'm not going to really break these fights down because I don't think they matter. Because these are like all 5 years ago. Recently, he came back after a 4-year layoff, fought Kyle Nelson. Should have beat Kyle Nelson. This draw is bullshit. He beat Kyle Nelson, which is a good win because Kyle Nelson put together a little streak. And then more recently, he beat Bill Algeo by TKO, broke his orbital bone, I think, in the 2nd round. Bill Algeo is a pretty tough guy. So to get a TKO on him like that, I think is pretty impressive. And he's looked pretty good in his grappling. His grappling's looked a little bit better. I think I'm going to lean Nate the Train here. But I can see Nate early running in like he always does, chin up high, trying to put pressure on. And I can see him eating an absolute piss missile. And, you know, in doing that, it is a 50-50 chance on if he either recovers and beats the shit out of Doohoo Choi or if he just gets flatline knocked out cold. It's a gamble. That's why this line is so close, I suspect. Because I think Landwehr generally is the better fighter. Technically wise, I think he has more variables that make him the better fighter. It's just he's a bit chinny. It's not like Doohoo Choi's got an invincible chin either. But Landwehr can get shut off by a big shot. And Doohoo Choi does have that big shot. I'm hoping for a 3-round war between these guys. That's what I'm hoping for. But I could also see Nate Landwehr getting himself a finish over Doohoo Choi as well. Like, Choi's not super durable, and Nate Landwehr did just KO Jamal Emmers, which is a great win. I'm excited for this fight. I'm going to go with Nate Landwehr by decision. But this really is a 50-50 matchup. I love this fight. Now moving to a fight I don't love. Moving up to featherweight, Bryce Mitchell versus Crone Gracie. Guys, I'm going with Bryce Mitchell. I know he got knocked into a seizure in his last fight against Josh Emmett. Luckily, we have nothing to worry about on the feet versus Crone Gracie. Crone Gracie is a insult to the sport. This guy sucks. Butt scooting jiu-jitsu merchant bum. I think Bryce Mitchell is just going to be able to beat the shit out of him on the feet. Um, Yeah, I'm not even gonna break this shit down. I think Chrome Gracie's fucking terrible. His last performance was an absolute insult to the sport, and he gets rewarded with a ranked matchup. Insane. Moving up to a fight I am excited for. Moving up to heavyweight, Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. Oh, this fight is sick. Two, by the way, this is their second time fighting. This is a hard one, guys, because Volkov, if you know, if you've watched the channel for any amount of time, Volkov is my favorite active heavyweight outside of Tom Aspinall. I've been a Volkov enjoyer for a very long time. Matter of fact, I picked Volkov to beat Pavlovich, which not a lot of people did. I'm a Volkov believer. But in picking Volkov to beat Pavlovich, I broke it down this way. I said if you're a slow, plodding heavyweight who moves linearly towards and away from Volkov, he will beat you in a kickboxing match like 95% of the time. The problem is Cyril Gane is not a plodding heavyweight who moves linearly back and forth. He's very light on his feet. He's very fast. He moves side to side laterally very well. And those are the guys that kind of give Volkov problems. Like if we look at Volkov and his career. Now Volkov's on a streak right now. A good streak too. But what do you notice here? When we look at this. Slow plodding heavyweight. Slow plodding heavyweight. At least this version of Overeem was. Dynamic lateral moving heavyweight. We lose a 5-round decision to. Slow plodding heavyweight. Dynamic moving heavyweight. With a lot of speed, we lose to. Slow plodding heavyweight, we beat. 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 I just think the trend is going to stay true to itself. Just outright. I love Volkov. I just think this is a hard matchup for him. Because not only is Cyril Gane very fast, very elusive, and moves around the cage very well, but he's one of the very few guys at heavyweight that can kick just as good as Volkov can. And Volkov's a guy who gets a lot of his work done actually with his kicks, like his front kick, his body kick, his low kick. If you can go kick for Volkov and you can move around him better than he can, he just kind of struggles in that matchup. So I'm gonna lean Cyril Gane. I think this line is a little bit off. I don't think he should be minus 350, especially with the inactivity that Gane has had. But I just think it's a style. I think it's a stylistic thing. You know what I mean? I do think on the feet, though, I think Volkov has way more power than a Cyril Gane on the feet. But I think Cyril Gane's a really hard guy to find the chin of. So yeah, I'm gonna slightly lean Cyril Gane. I think he's gonna win a decision here, just outpointing Volkov in a kickboxing matchup by this much over the rounds. Just moving more, putting more out there. Because Gane's gonna have an easier time finding Volkov, I think, than Volkov is gonna have finding Gane. I'd love Volkov to win. It would be amazing to see him go on this streak and finally earn himself a shot at the belt. Because the winner of this fight is fighting for the heavyweight title once that bitch John Jones vacates it. Yeah. It would be nice to see Volkov get a title shot if he wins here. I would love that, but I just think this is a bad stylistic matchup for him, honestly. Moving up to the co-main event at welterweight, guys. Talk about a banger. Shavkat Rakhmonov undefeated versus undefeated Ian Machado Gary. This is a sick fight, guys. This card is so good, dude. I'm going with Shavkat Rakhmonov over Ian Gary. I don't think he's minus 400 over Ian Gary at all. Now, I am a cautious Shavkat Rakhmonov believer. I actually think Rakhmonov is a little bit overrated as a fighter. I know a lot of people are like, what? No way. but I think he is. I think he is a little bit overrated. I think he's really good, and I think he's technical. But I think, when you look at these guys' resumes, oh, Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, Stephen Thompson, Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, Michael Venom Page. It's like the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like the exact same thing. So resume wise, like I'm not going too crazy for it. They're very similar, but I think Ian Gary generally is the sharper kickboxer of the two. I think Rachmanov has more power in all four of his limbs. I think Rachmanov has an advantage specifically in the clinch. I think Rachmanov's a very strong and physical guy. I think he can push Ian Gary up against the cage if he gets a hold of him in the clinch and be effective from there. And I think Rachmanov has a distinct grappling and submission edge over Ian Gary. That's why I'm picking him. I could easily see a world where Ian Gary kind of just they kickbox at range and Ian Gary outpoints him and wins a decision, and he might become the most hated fighter in UFC history, honestly. But I think Rachmanov is just a little bit more well-rounded. And I think he has edges in his game that Ian Gary has deficits in, specifically the grappling. Like he was able to outgrapple MVP, barely. Honestly, it's arguable he lost that fight to MVP. This is a tricky one. I'm going with Rachmanov. I honestly think he's going to submit Ian Gary. I think he's going to be able to get a takedown on Ian Gary and submit him, but I think it won't come easy. I think it will be very late in this fight, almost kind of like a Jeff Neal situation. Like I feel like these guys might get kind of scrappy, or Rachmanov's going to try and get scrappy, and Ian Gary's going to kind of dart in and out of range and try and keep his distance and land shots on Rachmanov over the 3 rounds. Or is this a 5-round co-main, or is this a 3-round? I actually don't know. I think it's 3 rounds. I could be wrong, but I don't think it matters. Yeah, I think Rachmanov might be able to catch Ian Gary up, maybe get him in a clinch, get him up against the cage as the fight kind of gets a little bit deeper, and then he might be able to get that trip on Ian Gary, get him down to the ground, and then we can really see what makes Shavkat Rachmanov so good, his submission game. I think his submission game is actually a lot more underrated, and I think his striking game is a little bit too overrated. So, yeah, I'm going to lean Shavkat Rachmanov here by submission in like round 3. We'll see, though, because I think Ian Gary is live to just have a point-fighting kickboxing match and win, honestly. And then closing out the card for the flyweight title, Alejandro Pantoja taking on the debuting Kai Asakura. Ooh, I'm excited for this fight. I'm so stoked for this fight, guys. I'm a big Kai Asakura fan. I'm a Kai Asakura enjoyer. I'm a Pantoja enjoyer too. Pantoja is the most underrated current UFC champion. I see a lot of talk about people calling this guy boring, and it drives me up the fucking wall. It's like, dude, you have to be just like someone who started watching the UFC like 6 months ago. There's no way. Pantoja's always in car crashes like 95% of the time. His only semi-boring fight was against Royval in their rematch. That was it. And Kai Asakura, I mean, he forces a hard fight. I'm so excited for this matchup. And guys, call me crazy, call me a lunatic, call me deranged, but I'm picking Kai Asakura to win this fight over Alejandro Pantoja. I think Kai Asakura, he's got decent takedown defense, and I think he has the power to be the first guy to really set Pantoja on his ass. Now, I know people can be like, oh, Pantoja took shots from Figueiredo and Moreno, and he never got knocked down. He was fine. What makes you think Kai Asakura is going to do that? Over time, a lead chin becomes softer. You know what I mean? It just does. I think both of these guys are going to go out there and they're going to get after it. Pantoja always sprints straight at his opponent and throwing with basically reckless abandon, trusting his chin. I think this is a dangerous guy to do that against. There are some certain intangibles with Kai Asakura that could be a little bit sketchy. Like as fight week gets closer to the fight night, I worry about the weight cut for Asakura here. He's going to be real sucked down at 125. But he is going to be a lot bigger than Pantoja on fight night. I think he's got a lot more power than Pantoja does on the feet. I think he's a much cleaner striker, but I don't trust Asakura's durability so much. I'm really interested to see how this fight plays out. And if Pantoja can get him down, he can submit Asakura. But Asakura's got some submissions as well. He's got some grappling skills. He's a really solid fighter. But I just really think I can see Pantoja running in kind of with that reckless abandon style that he has. And I can see him getting clipped on the feet and hurt early. When they're dry, Asakura lands a big counter shot on Pantoja, rushing in with his chin up, just kind of throwing just spurgy ass shots. And I can see it hurting Pantoja bad. Now, my only other concern is if Kai Asakura does hurt Pantoja bad, I'm worried about him disqualifying himself by soccer kicking Pantoja in the fucking face. Because in Ryzen, that is allowed. And a lot of Kai Asakura's most dangerous offense a lot of the time comes from him fucking punting people in the head when they're on the ground, or kneeing people in the head when they're on the ground. So he can't afford to do that here. But I think this pick is purely based off of a feeling. I understand if you're like, Pantoja's gonna outgrapple this guy. Boring. I also really want Asakura to win, because hear me out. If he does win, this opens up the flyweight division so much more. Like, because if he's the champion, now you have a Moreno fight, you have the Royval fight. If Tatsuro Taira gets another win or two, you have that fight. It's a fresh matchup. You have a lot more fresh matchups if Asakura wins this fight. Or you have Kai versus Kai. You know, you have all these matchups if he wins. I just think it's a perfect setting for him to debut and shock the fucking nation, baby. Am I biased? Yes. But I'm picking Kai Asakura. He's going to be the first guy to crack Alejandro Pantoja's chin. Please, Kai Asakura, if you can hear me, don't get grapple fucked and strangled. That would bum me out. I'm hoping this fight's an absolute car crash. I think it's probably going to be, just based on both of these guys' styles. I think this is going to be an absolute car crash. Yeah, I'm stoked for this one. Sick card this weekend. I think I've talked for about an hour. But yeah, that's it for this one, boys. That's enough yapping. If you enjoyed, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate that shit a ton, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.